So hello and welcome to the 27th episode of the Spotlight Podcast, the unofficial podcast for Century 21 sales representatives in Canada, where we discuss the hot topics and important news in the real estate industry. So I'm your host, Linas Kilius, and with me, as always, is Eryn Richardson. Hey, Eryn.
Good afternoon, Linas. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Excellent.
Eryn is a broker and general manager with Century 21 Heritage Group. Eryn has an extensive background in online marketing, technology, and customer service. And I'm the head of business development at the real estate marketing company, Homeania. Before we get into the show today, I had a quick couple of questions for Eryn, actually, because he was the reason we did do a show last week is because he was attending Century 21's management workshop in Toronto. How'd that go, Eryn? What was all that all about?
Oh, it was a really good workshop. Chris Leader, which is an industry icon when it comes to training, himself and his wife, actually, who works alongside him, Tina, she was really knowledgeable as well. And they put together a workshop, and they've done it for quite a few years in Toronto. And so agents, managers, owners from across Canada got together at the Sheraton in Toronto, and we had a fantastic, informative meeting all about the real estate industry and what ownership and how to, be successful as an owner or manager within a brokerage.
Yeah, I mean, I popped by and I was actually really surprised and impressed how much of a breadth of people from across the country there were. I was expecting, concerning it was based out of Toronto, that there would be mostly Southern Ontario people, but there were some. I met someone from BC out there too, as well as from out east. So I was pretty impressed. So is this something that Century 21 puts out on a regular basis?
Yeah, it seems like it is a regular thing every December, I guess, that they have the people from across Canada come to Toronto, and there just does seem to be a much heavier weight from the rest of the country, which is great. It gives them an opportunity to kind of get away and network amongst the agents across Canada. It was kind of Ron and I were there. Ron's another manager with us, and we were a little disappointed at the end of every day. They're like, oh, we're going to go for dinner and we're going to go, do this, do that. And we're like, oh, we're going to go home because we live half an hour away. So it didn't give us an opportunity necessarily to hang out a lot at night with the other agents. But with the workshops were fantastic.
So this is one of the best opportunities to do some networking and try and get some ideas with other managers. Are there other things? Obviously, there's national conference is a good place to go too, but are there any other resources that Century 21 has that managers or agents can take advantage of for networking?
Oh, well, I mean, the international conference is coming up in Las Vegas in February. Or is it February? No, it's March. It's March 5th in Las Vegas. And we're hoping to go to that as well. So that'll be a great networking, just not with Canada, obviously, with the U.S. As well. So that's coming up. I know the top 25 brokerages are invited to go to a chairman's circle, so that's in February, and as well the Canada conference, which is in Quebec City next year. So that'll be another opportunity. There's the Gold Gala, which is the awards night. There's just so many things to attend, and you can't go to all of them all the time, but if you get out to at least one a year, I think it's a fantastic opportunity.
So why is it so important to do this networking with other management and agents in the system too? Because I guess is it just a matter of making sure you keep your ideas fresh and kind of keeping an eye on what other people are doing to grow your brokerage or your personal business as well?
There's so many different levels of the reasons why. I mean, you learn things from other ideas. You collaborate with different things. You usually are able to take out a handful of things that you want to implement with your own business, whether it be if you're an agent or within your own brokerage, and of course the networking with referrals across Canada is always good too. When you establish those relationships and pass clients back and forth across the country.
Well, I mean, we kind of got a little bit off topic because we haven't even started the show yet. This was supposed to be a warm-up question to ask about the management workshop, but it turned out to be a bit more of a discussion about the different resources for networking we have and everything we have. Yeah. But on today's show, what our topic is and what we're going to be talking about are the advantages and disadvantages of creating a brokerage within a brokerage. Put those in quotes. Creating your own satellite office within a brokerage, perhaps incorporating your brokerage within a brokerage to benefit from tax advantages that come along with incorporation. Are these good ideas that we're going to save you money and grow your business in the process? Well, the answer isn't as clear-cut as you think, and that's what Eryn and I are going to be talking about today. So getting right into it, Eryn, what's the problem here? What are the advantages of incorporating your real estate business?
Well, and that's the buzzword right now. I know brokerages have been, or agents within the brokerage have been called a lot from different brands to say, hey, come with us, we'll incorporate you and make, you can have your own business within our company. And it was a bit of a buzz topic over the last couple of years. And I guess what's happening is a lot of people are either doing their due diligence and looking into it and making an informed decision, or jumping at it and realizing afterwards, whoa, there's a lot more involved in terms of a corporation that they maybe didn't think about. So we can talk about that.
Yeah, just to make sure that we frame it a little bit too, incorporation of your real estate business isn't consistent across Canada. In some regions like Ontario, you actually are not allowed to incorporate your personal business in real estate. However, other provinces like BC, this isn't an issue. So maybe we should talk about that first. Like, why is it an issue that you can't incorporate in Ontario as a real estate agent? Because most other professional entities can, like if you're a lawyer or an accountant, for instance.
A lot of times it's your regulatory body. So if RICO, for example, does have a Business of Brokers Act that deals with yourself as an individual agent not being able to incorporate. You cannot pay a commission to any other entity other than your personal self. So you can't incorporate within the Real Estate Council of Ontario. And yeah, I don't know necessarily. I mean, it's a bit of a, I guess, a tax issue with the Canadian tax code. I'm not sure all the politics involved, but the reality, the situation is you have to pay your personal income's tax based on your commission amount that you get paid from your brokerage, or you get from the sale of the property, and you're an independent contractor, all that kind of stuff. But you have to pay your nominal, whatever the tax rate is that you're going to be charged personally for the year. And so I don't know if you want me to get into a little bit about the advantages if people think the advantages if you have a corporation, for example.
Well, maybe let's hold off on that for a second, because one thing I do want to ask you is, and since we're talking about like Ontario specifically, is there is some momentum gathering behind this policy changing to, and amendments being made to some of the regulations in place for incorporating as a real estate agent. Do those have any legs? Like, are we going to be seeing a change to the incorporation restrictions in Ontario?
So there's a Tax Fairness to Realtors Act that was brought in, I think, 2015 by one of the MPs or one of the politicians. And there was a reading. It was the first reading, and you need 3 readings to get passed in terms of an act. So the first reading was done in, I think, 2015. And it's sort of just kind of, and I don't know if it was 2015. It might even been a bit earlier than that. But we're waiting for the second and third reading, and that can happen within a 2-week period. It's just a matter of a politician getting up there to support us. So I know there has been a lot of push for it by RIA and whatnot to pass the tax fairness so we can incorporate.
Is there anything that your average Joe real estate agent can do to help push this forward in Ontario?
Yeah, talk to your local politician and get them. I've put things on websites before. I think on my company's website, y21.ca, we put a tax fairness petition that's sent off every time you fill it in. Another email gets sent off to our MP to get them to push to do something to push this bill through. Get the second and third reading done.
All right. So it sounds like maybe eventually it's going to happen, but obviously the wheels sometimes take a long time to turn in terms of changing regulations and such. But for the meantime, before we get into the advantages again of incorporating, is there anything that someone can do to kind of get around these limitations as well?
I've heard different things that I've been told that people are doing in terms of setting up corporations to manage their business, and you pay the corporation to manage the business a certain amount, and then the business pays all your bills, for example. It's just, there's different ways to, from a tax perspective. I think that that's very dangerous. I think it's dangerous to look at different ways to try and manipulate the system, because you might get caught. So, my whole feeling is, don't mess with something unless you know that you're doing, it the right way. You don't want to get caught. There is, I guess the question is, there are ways around it. Well, there is something that I know RE/MAX sort of spearheaded, and it was incorporation of a business within a brokerage within a brokerage, if you will. So you would basically be having a separate franchise agreement to saying, let's say if I wanted to incorporate personally Eryn Richardson within the brokerage, I could start up my own company, Century 21 Heritage Eryn Richardson, and I would be sort of a subsidiary of the brand so I'd be my own brokerage. You need a broker of record, you need a trust account, you need everything a normal brokerage would have. And essentially Century 21 would be helping you do this. With Century 21, they have set up that ability. They call it the ABA, Affiliated Broker Agreement. And so there is that opportunity for you to do that within the Century 21 brand.
Maybe now is a good time to talk about, is this worth it? I mean, it sounds like it's potentially a lot of hassle. What are the advantages specifically? I mean, we touched on them briefly near the top of the show, but what are the advantages of incorporating specifically? Like, why would you want to incorporate as opposed to just claiming your expenses on your personal income?
Well, I mean, there are different reasons. The main thing people really want to incorporate for is so they can pay a 15% tax on income, opposed to, let's say, 45% if you're in a certain tax bracket. Of course, it's graduated, so it's not always the same tax bracket. But essentially, what you want to do is you don't want to pay as much tax to the government. That's the main reason why people want to incorporate, other than having your name on a sign to have a little bit of I guess it's a bit of an ego thing to say that I own my own brokerage. So there's that as well. And I say ego, it's a marketing thing, we'll call it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the advantages of keeping the money within the company, so you do get taxed on the profits lower of the tax bracket. However, once you decide to take that money out, I guess you can take it out different ways. I've read some different strategies too. You could even have, like, say, your family members be employees of the incorporation. You can kind of spread out your income a little bit easier as well. I mean, it seems like there's a whole bunch of different tax advantages that you can take advantage of if you do have your incorporated personal real estate business. I'm not sure if you've heard of anything like that or any different ways to take advantage of it.
And again, I'm going to preface this by saying I don't give any tax advice. Go see an accountant and all the rest of it. But what you had mentioned there in terms of paying somebody in your family if they're in a different tax bracket, I mean, we could technically do that now. You don't have to incorporate to do that. You can still have an assistant. You can pay an employee salary to your wife, for example, and whatnot. So there's that. I think the incorporation side, the benefits to having the incorporation is if you make enough money where you can leave some of that money in the corporation and not pay yourself a dividend. So you leave that money in the corporation year after year till eventually you can either buy a piece of property, an investment property within the corporation, for example, maybe own your own office or purchase something down the road. I think that's the main reason why people would want to incorporate. You do have to leave money in the corporation for it to make any sense.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So now, is it worth it? Going through and obviously in some provinces where it's a little bit easier, that's not so much of an issue. But let's say we're talking about Ontario with the specific franchise agreement that you'd have, the associated franchise agreement. Is that something that's worthwhile going through the headache of to get these tax advantages?
I would say the majority of the time from the people that have come to me and I've pointed in the direction of an accountant and the affiliated broker agreement and all the rest of it, they do their due diligence and find out no, it's not really worth it. And the reason being is there is a lot involved in terms of setting up your own business, and whether it be the corporation process, incorporating a business, the costs associated with the liabilities that come with it, the overhead and the just the administrative issues. And then in the end, keeping the money in the corporation, it's hard. When you have a lifestyle, it doesn't matter whether or not you're making $100,000 a year or $1 million a year. You have a lifestyle, and you're using that money most of the time. So it's very difficult sometimes to keep money in a corporation just sitting there, not doing anything other than maybe invested or whatnot. But the corporation, the only advantage is really so you get taxed at a lower rate. But you don't get to use that money until you take it out. And then when you take it out, you have to claim it, and then it's your personal. So it's, it's a little bit like an RSP almost, but there's other things involved. So.
Yeah, well, I guess it might only make sense too if you're a higher volume real estate agent as well. I could see that potentially being a place where you could more take advantage of this, because you might the absorption of these administrative costs might be offset by the tax advantages and such too.
Okay, so to give an example, if you're making, let's say, $300,000, $400,000 range, that's where you shouldn't even think about incorporation, I think, until you hit those sort of numbers. And even at that point in time, you are better spent reinvesting your money back in your business and using that as a write-off in terms of advertising to grow your business before you start thinking about incorporation. If you get upwards of $1 million and you're built a good business, you don't want to grow your business any further by advertising and doing any more write-offs, or you just feel that you've reached your limit and you want to incorporate and you think you're going to buy a building, those are the sort of things that it might make some sense. But I think in the end too, you have to also decide, to go through this whole process. And then find out in June that agents are going to be able to be incorporated in Ontario. You've spent a lot of time, effort, and money to incorporate something that, was coming 6 months later. So,
yeah, well, it does sound like, at least in Ontario's case, that this is something that will hopefully be pushing along pretty quickly, and maybe even better served your time would be to, like you said, contact your local MP and maybe try and get behind allowing for this to happen and trying to spearhead a bit of a movement for this. But what about the other side of things too that we talked about as well? What about like satellite offices too? Because there would be a lot of overhead with that. Why would someone want to create a satellite office, this other form of a brokerage within a brokerage?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I did 10 years ago, so I have some sort of insight on the satellite office end of things. It's sort of the best of both worlds, where you're starting up, your own little office separate from the main office. It gives you a nice little work environment where you can maybe build a team from, and teams are very popular right now. So you're creating your own culture within a separate office. So I mean, there's some small advantages to doing that. I think when I started our first satellite office, I thought, I came from a retail background. I thought I was going to get a lot of walk-ins, a lot of traffic, and I can convert that traffic into leads. And sure enough, in the first couple of years, I did a few deals from it. Definitely, I thought, yeah, at least it covers the costs, some of the costs associated with having your own office. But what I've quickly realized that the money that we're spending on the office could, again, easily be put into a good advertising campaign online, for example, that generates leads and grows our business at a much higher rate than having our own office. So, looking back, I think I would have liked to have, probably spent that money in different directions in terms of building the business rather than just having an office for the sake of having a nice work environment.
Were there other advantages to having the satellite office? Maybe like geographically speaking, being closer to like your farm area or something along those lines too?
Yeah, I mean, having a separate office with your name on the, obviously, the company's name's on the front, but your name up there along with it to say this is, the team office. It definitely, the way I look at it, was an advantage to the sense that gives us some more advertising in the area. So, if I'm going to buy a bench ad, I might as well put it on a side of a building and spend that money towards having a nice office. And there's costs associated with having an office within your brokerage too. So depending on your brokerage and what they charge for offices, it might make some monetary sense to have your own separate office. But again, you really have to have a good business plan to figure out and see if it outweighs the advantages, outweighs the benefits.
Hey, well, talking about other places to spend your money then too, like if instead of spending your time, money potentially going into creating your own satellite office, where would you potentially be able to spend this better? I mean, I guess that's a bit of a loaded question because there's lots of ways you can go with it, but in terms of getting those advantages, those leads, that advertising advantage that you're talking about, that kind of like branding in the neighborhood, are there other places you can spend an equivalent amount of money and maybe get more bang for your buck?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple that I would suggest you look towards. And let's say you're going to open an office, and listen, opening an office can have different overheads, but let's say it's $2,500 a month. We'll keep it on the relatively reasonable side, and get a small little office in town, and say so it's $2,500. Where could I spend the $2,500 a month and be more effective? I would look at farming. I would look at because it's not a cheap undertaking to try and buy some business in an area by doing flyers, once a week, once every other week, and getting out there and buying a bench and, making sure everybody in that area knows you. So farming would be one. And then, if somebody came to me and said, I like to spend the $2,500 a month on online advertising, I would be all right. Let's get this going, because I love the online advertising end of things. And I think a lot of people obviously are getting some leads online. And as long as you have a good conversion program and you're able to do something with the leads, I think online is where it's at now too. So farming and online advertising is the two areas I would look towards.
You mentioned bench ads, and I've always wondered how well those actually work. What's your take on bench ads, since we're talking about? I know it's a little bit off topic, but I've always been curious as to what the best kind of strategy is there. 'Cause some agents seem to swear by them. I've been in areas where you can't find a bench without that agent's name all over their farming area, right, to get that branding out. I mean, in terms of advertising, branding advertising is always the one that's a bit more difficult to put a dollar value on, because you're putting your name out there, you're getting your brand out there. It's not necessarily like advertising money to like directly convert to sell a product, like an online advertising situation too, where you're trying to get those clicks, you're trying to convert those leads. It's a bit harder to evaluate the performance of something like bench ads, is what I'm getting at. So what's your take on I guess the print advertising in the public?
Yeah, the print, I mean, you have to have a good business plan in order to be successful in any money you spend in the real estate business. You have to be smart about how you spend it. You'll talk to one agent, they'll say benches. Nobody calls off benches. Why would you put it's just for the image. You want to see yourself around town. Again, an ego thing. It's very strategic. Bench ads are extremely effective if you do a really good job farming. And what I mean by that is that there should be, people think farming is just, okay, I'll do some door knocking. That's my area. I'll send some flyers out. Now, if you have a system that's strategically sending out flyers once every week, once every couple weeks, I'm not a big fan of once a month. I don't think it's enough in a lot of cases. But if you're doing it that consistently, door knocking so they see your face, hosting an event in the area, and all of a sudden people start to see, wow, this guy's all over the place. And then you get a bench, and now he's all over a bench. So everybody knows your name. And if you Google why choose a real estate or how to choose a real estate agent, the first thing that comes up is choose a local person that knows the business. So obviously people will call the person that knows or has seen the most in an area. And that's how farming is effective. And that's how a bench will be effective.
Yeah, it almost does seem like there's kind of this minimum amount you have to do. You're kind of mentioning it before. Again, it comes down to like branding, advertising. You can't just spend a small amount and expect it to do well. You need to make sure that you are that kind of dominant name in an area or something. It's not like Coca-Cola, for instance, doesn't just spend a small amount of money on an ad here or there. They try and get everywhere, right? So that as soon as you think about drinking a soft drink, you're thinking about Coke, right?
That's right.
And that's the power of branding is that you associate that. You probably even think of like, say, other types of sodas as like less popular, less good, because you see Coke everywhere. No matter like what your personal taste is, like everyone assumes it's a higher quality product, I guess. And I guess that's what you're trying to do with branding in an area. But you do have to have that solid strategy and make sure that you're everywhere too. I almost feel like and get that constant bombardment of people in the area with your image and your branding in order for it to work properly too.
It's all psychology. And there's a lot of trainers out there. It's all about psychology. And I think the number is 40. 40 is if you see something 40 times within a certain time period, it becomes to be part of your in the back of your brain. If you see your face 40 times over in the next 2 months, they're going to remember you. But they have to see it consistently. And that bench is on the way out in the morning when you're going to work and on the way in the morning. So it's twice a day they're seeing your brand. That's why a bench can be extremely effective.
Go figure. We started talking about brokerages within a brokerage, and we end up talking about bench ads.
Farmers.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're getting a little bit longer on the show, so maybe we'll start wrapping it up here. But do you have anything else that you want to talk about, like creating like a brokerage in the brokerage? Like generally, it seems like you're kind of leaning towards it's better not to spend your money elsewhere, other than doing like either in Ontario at least looking into incorporating or creating like a satellite office. Is that a fair assessment of what you've been saying today?
Yeah, you know what? One of the reasons why I think it was nice that we brought this topic up, and it was sort of I got a phone call last night from one of the agents in our office, and their idea was to open a satellite office. They were going to get their, a few of the agents get their pull their money together and open up a little office and do some duty time at the office, thinking that they'll get some people to walk in. So I went through the scenario and said, do your research and look into everything. I wasn't saying not to do it. I said just be careful with it, because I've seen a lot of people open up these small shops and expect people to walk in. And when it comes to real estate, I told them, I said, look at our office that has 220 agents, and in a downtown core, how many people walked in and actually created, a lead was generated from somebody just saying, hey, I want to sell my house. Do you have an agent that can help me? And it just doesn't happen anymore. And it doesn't happen to any consistency or amount where you're actually going to make a profit from it. I just don't believe that that is something that's happening. So if you're thinking about opening a satellite office and you're thinking about incorporating and doing your own thing, really consider everything before you do it. And definitely, don't heavily weight it towards the fact that we're going to get some walk-in and leads generated from it, because it doesn't happen as often as you may think.
Okay, so not necessarily for everyone. Do your homework. Make sure you've got a solid business plan going forward, I guess. And then, like Eryn was saying too, I guess the important thing is to evaluate your alternatives. See where else you can use that money that would be an opportunity cost lost if you're doing your own satellite office as well, and see which kind of route, I guess, would be the most effective use of your money and your time. So I think we'll wrap up the show there then. So if you like the show, subscribe to our show on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts online. And please don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on those sites. You can watch this and past shows at spotlight.century21.ca/podcast. If you need to reach us, you can email us anytime at podcast@homeania.com. That's podcast at HOM as in Mary, EAN as in Nancy, IA.com. So this podcast was brought to you by the Spotlight Marketing Program, an exclusive marketing package available only to Century 21 agents in Canada. Spotlight provides agents with a comprehensive internet marketing strategy for their listings. We provide high-quality HDR photography, stunning HD video tours, a cutting-edge responsive website, and an extensive advertising system that helps sell your listings faster, sell them for more money, impress your clients, and generate leads. Find out why so many top agents are using Spotlight by visiting spotlight.century21.ca today. Thanks everyone for watching. Have a great week.